3 shots echoed across the frozen canyon. Josiah Ward stopped mid-stride, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. The sound rolled through the valley like distant thunder, bouncing off rock walls and dying somewhere in the pine trees to the east. He set the cup down slowly, reached for the Winchester leaning against the porch rail. Someone was dying on his land, and he needed to know who. The morning air cut sharp as a blade. Frost clung to every surface, turning the world into something brittle and white. Josiah's breath rose in pale clouds as he saddled his horse, fingers working the leather straps with the automatic precision of a man who had done this 10,000 times before. 45 years old, 14 of those spent in uniform, 3 more spent trying to forget. The horse moved beneath him, hooves crunching through the frozen crust of snow. Josiah kept the Winchester across his saddle, eyes scanning the tree line as he rode toward the sound. He found the bodies near Broken Creek. 2 men, white, dressed in the rough clothes of bounty hunters. One lay face down in the shallow water, blood turning the ice pink around his head. The other sprawled against a boulder, 3 Apache arrows buried deep in his chest. Josiah dismounted slowly, knelt beside the first body. The blood on the rocks had dried dark brown. These men died hours ago, probably in the dark before dawn. He studied the arrows Chiricahua make. The fletching told him that much, but something else caught his attention. The second man had a bullet wound in his chest, not an arrow, a bullet, and the pattern of brass casings in the snow told a story. Someone had fired 3 shots straight up, a signal, a cry for help, before they died. Josiah searched the bodies, standard practice from the war. Know your enemy even when he's dead. The younger bounty hunter carried $50 in gold coin, a wanted poster for Apache renegades, and a letter. The letter was addressed to Emmett Crane, from his brother Virgil. Josiah read it twice, his jaw tightening with each word. Find the Apache girl. Bring her back alive if you can, dead if you must. Either way, I want that rancher's land. The creek is worth more than gold out here. Make it happen, little brother. Virgil Crane, the man who had burned 3 homesteads last year for refusing to sell, the man who had hung a Mexican farmer for trespassing on open range, the man who had lost everything in Atlanta and spent 20 years trying to rebuild his empire on the bones of anyone who stood in his way. And Josiah had just found his brother dead on his land. He burned the letter, but the words stayed with him. This was not going to end with a wounded Apache girl. This was going to end in blood. Josiah followed the tracks away from the creek. Blood drops in the snow, growing fainter with each step. Whoever survived this fight was wounded, moving slow. Heading toward his ranch, he found her in a shallow cave, half a mile from the bodies. She sat with her back against the stone, a knife clutched in one hand, dark eyes watching him with the flat calm of someone who had already accepted death. Young, maybe 23. Apache without question. Her left thigh was wrapped in bloody cloth, the wound still seeping through the makeshift bandage. Josiah stopped 10 feet away, kept the Winchester pointed at the ground. Drop the blade, he said. I'm not here to hurt you. Then walk away. Her English was clear, touched with an accent that spoke of mission schools and forced education. I won't be taken alive. Those bounty hunters back there, you killed them. They gave me no choice. They wanted $50 for my scalp. How long have you been running? 14 days? Her voice was flat, matter-of-fact. The council cast me out when I refused to marry Nantan's brother. They said I shamed our people by speaking against the war. They gave me a horse and 3 days of food. The horse died in the first blizzard. The food ran out a week ago. 14 days, alone, in winter, with half the territory hunting her for bounty money. Josiah had known soldiers who could not survive 3 days in these conditions. You're tougher than you look, he said. I had no choice. He studied her for a long moment. The way she held herself, the intelligence in her eyes, the absolute absence of fear. He had seen that look before, on the faces of men waiting to die at Chickamauga, on his own face reflected in creek water after 3 days without sleep. You got a name? He asked. Nalin. I'm Josiah Ward. I own the ranch about a mile west of here. He gestured toward her leg. That wound needs cleaning. You stay out here much longer, infection will kill you before any bounty hunter does. Why would you help me? It was a fair question. Josiah considered it for a moment, watching his breath fog the air between them. Because I'm tired of watching people die on my land, he said finally, and because I know what it feels like to be hunted. He turned and walked back toward his horse. After a long moment, he heard her following. The ranch house was small but solid, built to survive winters, not to impress visitors. Josiah had constructed most of it himself, log by log, in the months after the war ended and before he found Martha. He did not like thinking about Martha. He cleaned the wound on Nalan's thigh while she sat rigid on the kitchen table, jaw clenched against the pain. The bullet had passed clean through the muscle. Lucky, a few inches to the right, and it would have shattered the bone. "This will need stitches," he said. She nodded once, and he worked in silence, needle and thread moving with practiced efficiency. 14 years in the cavalry had taught him more about battlefield medicine than any doctor's training. "You were a soldier," Nalan said. It was not a question. "4th Cavalry Sergeant, long time ago. You've seen death before, not just in war." Josiah paused. His hands went still on the bandage. How did she know? "We all carry our ghosts," he said quietly. The words brought it back, unbidden, unwanted, 3 years ago. The fever had come fast, spreading through the valley like wildfire, Martha's skin burning under his palm, little Ellie crying in the next room, too weak to stand. He had saddled his horse in the dark, rode 40 miles through a snowstorm to find the doctor in Tucson. 40 miles there, 40 miles back. When he pushed open the cabin door, the silence told him everything. Martha lay still in their bed, one hand reaching toward Ellie's small form beside her, both cold, both gone. He had been too late, by hours, by minutes. It did not matter. Too late was too late. Josiah blinked. His hands had gone still on the bandage. He finished wrapping the wound and stepped back. Nalan tested the leg carefully, wincing but managing to stand. "I can work," she said. "I don't need charity." Didn't offer any. Josiah moved to the window, looking out at the frozen landscape. "You can stay until that leg heals, then you're on your own." And if someone comes looking for me?" He thought about the letter in Emmett Crane's pocket, about Virgil Crane and his army of hired guns. "Then we'll deal with it when it happens." 2 days passed in an uneasy rhythm. Nalan healed faster than Josiah expected. By the second morning, she was up before dawn, sweeping the floor with a broom she had found in the corner. By afternoon, she was helping him repair the fence line, her movements careful but determined. They did not talk much. Words felt unnecessary. She noticed things about him: the empty chair at the kitchen table, the small dress folded in the bottom drawer of the bedroom, the 2 wooden crosses on the hill behind the cabin. She never asked about them. He was grateful for that. On the 3rd day, the riders came. Josiah saw the dust cloud first, 5 horses moving slow, coming from the south. But Josiah knew Virgil Crane never traveled without backup. There would be more men waiting somewhere. There always were. He reached for the Winchester without thinking. "Get inside," he told Nalan. "There's a root cellar beneath the kitchen floor. Don't come out until I call for you." She hesitated for just a moment. Then she was gone, moving without sound. Josiah walked to the porch and waited. The man who led the riders was tall and lean, with silver-streaked hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from old leather. A scar ran from his temple to his jawline, the kind of scar you got from burning. He wore a Confederate officer's coat, faded gray, the brass buttons still polished. Virgil Crane. "Sergeant Ward." Crane's voice was smooth, almost pleasant. "I remember you from the war. You were at Chickamauga, weren't you? And you were at Atlanta before Sherman burned it to the ground." Something flickered in Crane's eyes. Old pain, old rage. "My brother Emmett is dead, killed by Apache arrows. His body was found on your land. Your brother was hunting a woman for $50. He got what bounty hunters get." "Where is she?" Josiah met his gaze without flinching. "Gone. Headed north 2 days ago." Crane smiled. It was the smile of a man who did not believe a word he was hearing, but did not care enough to argue. "I've wanted this ranch for 3 years, Ward. That creek of yours is the only water for 30 miles. One way or another, I'll have it." He gathered his reins. "Emmett's death just makes it easier." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Crane turned his horse. "I'm riding to the marshal in Tucson. I'll tell him you're harboring an Apache murderer. Legal or not, I'll burn this place to the ground." He looked back over his shoulder, eyes cold as the winter sky. "You have 3 days to hand her over." The riders disappeared into the distance, swallowed by the frozen landscape. Josiah stood on the porch for a long time, watching them go. Then he went inside and opened the cellar door. Nalan climbed out, her face unreadable. "He won't wait 3 days," she said. Josiah checked the ammunition in his Colt. "I know, neither will I." Virgil Crane had sent 5 men to deliver his threat, but a man like Crane did not survive this long by running short on hired guns. Josiah spent the next morning watching the southern road through his field glasses. He counted the riders gathering at the old Miller homestead 5 miles south, 8 men now, plus Crane himself, reinforcements from his ranch, hungry for blood money and revenge, 9 guns against 2. Josiah had faced worse odds at Chickamauga. But at Chickamauga, he had an army behind him. Here, he had a Winchester, a Colt, and a wounded Apache woman who refused to run. He spent the 4th day preparing for war. Josiah pulled his weapons from the locked chest beneath his bed and laid them on the kitchen table. Winchester model 1873, lever action, 15 rounds in the magazine, chambered in 44-40, effective range 200 yards, though Josiah had made kills at 300 in the war. The action was smooth as silk. Colt single action army, 6 rounds and .45 caliber, the gun that had kept him alive through 4 years of war and 10 years of frontier living. The grip was worn smooth where his palm had rested 10,000 times. Double-barreled shotgun, 12 gauge, 2 shells at a time, devastating at close range, useless beyond 20 yards. He counted ammunition, 60 rounds for the Winchester, 30 for the Colt, 24 shotgun shells, not enough for a siege, but enough to make them pay for every inch of ground. They dug shallow trenches around the cabin, 50 yards out, piled sandbags at the windows, strung wire across the approaches, and hung tin cans from them, crude alarms that would rattle at the slightest touch. Nalin worked beside him despite her wounded leg, never complaining, never slowing. "Why are you doing this?" she asked as they stacked firewood against the north wall. "You could hand me over. Keep your land." Josiah straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I spent 4 years in the war watching men die for land, watching boys who'd never kissed a girl bleed out in fields that didn't belong to anyone." He picked up another log. "I'm done letting other people decide who lives and who dies on my property." He handed her the shotgun that evening, showed her how to load it, how to brace against the kick. Point and pull. Don't think. She held the weapon like she had been born with it in her hands. The attack came at 2 in the morning. Josiah woke to the sound of tin cans rattling in the darkness. He was on his feet before his eyes were fully open, the Winchester already in his hands. Through the window, he saw shapes moving toward the barn. 4 men, carrying torches. He went out the back door without making a sound. The night was cold and clear, stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. Josiah moved through the darkness the way he had learned in the war, low and quick, using every shadow. The first man died before he knew Josiah was there. 1 shot, clean. The torch fell from his hands and sputtered in the snow. Then everything became chaos. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Muzzle flashes lit the night like lightning, brief and blinding. Josiah dropped behind the water trough, feeling bullets thud into the wood above his head. He worked the Winchester's lever, smooth, automatic, aim, fire, lever, aim, fire, lever. A second man spun and fell, clutching his chest. From the cabin, the shotgun roared. The blast caught the third man square in the back. He flew forward, hit the ground, and did not move. The fourth man ran. Josiah let him go. Let him carry the message back to Virgil Crane. We are not easy prey. When the shooting stopped, the silence felt louder than the gunfire had been. Josiah walked through the aftermath, checking bodies, collecting weapons. 3 dead. The barn was scorched but standing. 1 horse dead, killed by a stray bullet. Nalin stood on the porch, the shotgun still smoking in her hands. "You're a good shot," Josiah said. "My father taught me." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "He said a warrior uses any weapon available." "Smart man. Dead man. Killed by soldiers 3 winters ago." They stood in silence for a moment. 2 people bound by violence, watching the smoke rise into the frozen sky. The Apache came at dawn. Josiah was checking the fence when he saw them. 4 warriors emerging from the tree line like ghosts, their approach so silent that even the horses did not notice until they were already there. The leader was young, maybe 28. His face was hard as carved stone, and a battle scar ran the length of his left arm. He carried a rifle across his saddle, but his hands rested easy. Not threatening, not yet. Nalin appeared beside Josiah, her expression unreadable. "Nantan," she said quietly. The warrior's eyes found hers. Something passed between them. History. Bad blood. "Nalin," his English was broken, heavily accented. "My brother died waiting for you. You owe my family." "Your brother died fighting the blue soldiers. I owe nothing." The council decided. "You come back. Be my wife. Complete the promise to my brother." He paused. "Or you die as a traitor." "I would rather die than live as your dog." Nantan's jaw tightened. His hand moved closer to his rifle. Josiah stepped forward, placing himself between them. "I don't know what you're saying," he said evenly, "but I know that tone. The lady says no, time to leave." Nantan studied him with dark, measuring eyes. "White man? You protect her? She not your woman? She's under my roof. That makes her my responsibility. Crane men want her dead. We want her alive." Nantan gathered his reins. "You will lose either way." He turned his horse toward the trees. "3 sons, then we return, with more warriors." They vanished into the forest as silently as they had come. Josiah let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. "Well," he said, "this just got complicated." That night they planned. Josiah drew a rough map in the dirt floor of the cabin, marking positions, distances, approaches. Crane has 8 men left, plus himself. Nantan will bring at least 6 warriors, maybe more. He tapped the map with his finger. "We can't fight both." "Then we make them fight each other." Nalin knelt beside the map, her eyes bright with something that might have been hope, or might have been desperation. "Broken Spine Canyon." She drew a line through the dirt. "Narrow entrance, high walls, one way in, one way out. I know the place. If both groups enter at the same time, they will see each other as threats. White men and Apache," she looked up at him, "they shoot first. And we take the high ground, pick off the survivors." "Yes." Josiah stared at the map for a long time. It was a desperate plan. The kind of plan that worked brilliantly, or failed catastrophically with nothing in between. "And it's a death trap," he said finally. "For them, or for us. Better than waiting here to be slaughtered." He could not argue with that. The morning of the 6th day broke cold and clear. Nalin left before dawn, riding east toward Broken Spine Canyon, leaving a trail that a blind man could follow. Josiah waited 2 hours, then made his own departure, obvious enough for Crane's scouts to see. The trap was set. Now they just had to survive it. Broken Spine Canyon lived up to its name. The walls rose sheer on both sides, 200 feet of red rock that caught the morning sun and threw it back like fire. The floor was narrow, barely wide enough for 3 horses to ride abreast. A perfect killing ground. Josiah climbed to a ledge on the southern wall, 50 feet above the canyon floor. From here he could see both entrances, could see anyone who came through. Nalin took position on the northern wall opposite him. They could not see each other through the rocks, but they did not need to. They knew where to shoot. They waited. The dust came from the south first, Virgil Crane and 8 riders moving fast, eager for blood, then from the north. Nantan and 6 warriors following Nalin's trail. They entered the canyon at almost the same moment, and saw each other. For one frozen instant nobody moved. 2 enemies face to face in a narrow space with nowhere to run. Then someone fired. The first 30 seconds were pure slaughter. Crane's men fired wildly into the Apache line, pistols barking, rifles cracking. The warriors answered with arrows and gunfire of their own, their aim steadier, more patient. A white man fell from his horse, an arrow through his throat. He hit the ground, still twitching. An Apache warrior took a bullet in the chest, spun backward, crashed against the canyon wall, and slid down, leaving a red smear on the rock. Horses screamed and bucked, throwing riders into the crossfire. One animal went down with 3 bullets in its flank, crushing its rider beneath it. The man's screams lasted only seconds. Josiah worked the Winchester's lever, smooth, automatic. The way he had done it 1,000 times at Chickamauga, at Shiloh, at a dozen battles he had tried to forget. Aim, fire, lever, aim, fire, lever. One of Crane's men looked up, spotted the muzzle flash on the cliff. He raised his rifle. Josiah shot him through the eye before he could pull the trigger. Another man ran for cover behind a boulder. Josiah waited. Patience. The man's boot stuck out past the rock. Josiah put a bullet through his ankle. The man screamed, lurched into the open. The second bullet silenced him. On the northern wall, Nalin's shotgun thundered. The blast caught an Apache warrior and a white gunman standing too close together. Both went down in a spray of blood and buckshot. 10 minutes, maybe less. It felt like hours. When the smoke cleared, the canyon floor was littered with bodies. Crane had lost 5 men. Nantan had lost 4 warriors. The survivors huddled at opposite ends of the canyon, bleeding and broken. Virgil Crane stepped into the open. His coat was torn, his face streaked with blood and gunpowder, but his eyes burned with a fury that had nothing to do with the battle. Ward, his voice echoed off the canyon walls. I know you're up there. Josiah did not answer. You want this to end. Come down. Face me like a man. Crane spread his arms wide. You win. My men ride away. I win. The ranch is mine. It was a trap. Had to be. But Josiah looked at the bodies in the dust, looked at the men still pointing guns at each other, looked at the canyon that had become a slaughterhouse, and started climbing down. They faced each other in the center of the canyon, 20 paces apart. Crane's remaining men watched from the south. Nantan and his surviving warrior watched from the north. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, just two men in the space between them. You should have handed her over, Crane said. Could have kept your land, your life. You should have stayed in Georgia. Josiah kept his hand loose at his side, fingers inches from the Colt. Could have died with dignity. Crane laughed. It was a hollow sound, empty of anything resembling joy. Dignity. I lost that at Atlanta. Watched everything I ever loved burn to ashes. His hand drifted toward his holster. All I have left is land and revenge. Then you have nothing. The moment stretched. Time slowed to a crawl. Wind blew through the canyon, stirring dust around their feet. Crane moved first. His hand was fast, faster than Josiah expected. The Colt cleared leather in a blur, the barrel swinging up toward Josiah's chest. Josiah drew second, but he did not rush, did not panic, just let his hand find the grip, the way it had 1,000 times before, let muscle memory guide the motion. 2 shots rang out. Crane's bullet caught Josiah in the left shoulder, spinning him half around. Pain exploded through his body, hot and immediate. Josiah's bullet hit Crane in the stomach, dead center. The older man staggered, looked down at the blood spreading across his shirt, looked up at Josiah with something like surprise. Should have aimed higher, he whispered, then he fell. Virgil Crane died in the dust of Broken Spine Canyon, his eyes open to the Arizona sky. The 3 surviving riders looked at their fallen leader, looked at Josiah, still standing despite the blood running down his arm. They turned their horses and rode away without a word, but Nantan remained. He stepped forward, his rifle held loose in his hands. The warrior beside him followed, watching Josiah with wary eyes. White man kills white man, Nantan said. Good. Now give me the woman. Nalin appeared at the canyon rim. She climbed down slowly, deliberately, the empty shotgun still in her hands. Nantan did not know it was empty. That was the point. I am not property to be traded, she said in Apache, then in English for Josiah's benefit. I belong to no one. You shame my brother's memory, shame our family, shame our people. Your brother wanted a bride. I wanted a life. Nalin stood straight, unafraid. That is not shame. That is truth. Josiah raised his Colt with his good arm. The movement sent fire through his wounded shoulder, but he did not let it show. She made her choice. I made mine. His voice was steady despite the pain. You want her? You go through me first. Nantan's eyes moved from the gun to Josiah's face, to Nalin, to the bodies scattered across the canyon floor. The warrior beside him spoke quietly in Apache. Enough blood for one day. Nantan's jaw clenched. For a moment, violence hung in the air like thunder before lightning. Then he lowered his rifle. You win today, Nalin, but you are no longer Apache. He turned toward the canyon entrance. You are no one. I am myself, she answered. That is enough. Nantan vanished into the rocks. The last warrior followed, and then they were alone. Nalin bandaged his shoulder as the sun set over the canyon. Her hands were gentle but efficient, wrapping the wound with strips torn from a dead man's shirt. That shotgun was empty, Josiah said. Wasn't it? She smiled slightly, the first real smile he had seen from her since the first battle. You bluffed a war chief with an empty gun. I learned from watching you. They rode back to the ranch in silence, moving slowly through the gathering darkness. 6 weeks later, early spring 1883, the snow was melting. Josiah stood on the porch, watching water run down the hillside in thin silver streams. The air smelled different now, warmer, full of the promise of things growing. His shoulder still ached when the weather changed, but the wound had healed clean, just another scar to add to the collection. Nalin came out of the barn carrying a bucket of feed for the horses. She moved without the limp now, her leg fully healed. Supply wagon came through yesterday, she said. News from town. Good news or bad? Crane's men scattered after the canyon. Most of them left the territory. She set down the bucket. The marshal isn't investigating. He called it a conflict between outlaws and Apache. No concern of his. Josiah nodded slowly. Out here, Justice was whatever people decided it was. And Nantan? Gone back to his people. They say he tells stories about me now. The woman who betrayed her blood, she shrugged. Let him talk. Stories don't hold rifles. That afternoon, Nalin found him on the hill behind the cabin, standing between the two wooden crosses. She did not speak, just stood beside him, waiting. Martha, Josiah said finally, and Ellie, my wife and daughter. The names felt strange on his tongue. He had not spoken them aloud in 3 years. The sickness came fast, fever, then worse. I rode 40 miles to find a doctor. He paused. When I got back, they were already gone. Nalin said nothing, but she reached out and laid her hand on his arm just for a moment. It was enough. That evening, they sat on the porch, watching the sun go down. The sky turned gold, then orange, then deep red. I should leave, Nalin said quietly. Find somewhere they don't know my face. You could? But... Josiah looked out at the land. His land. Bought with blood and defended with more. Ranch this size needs more than one pair of hands. As what? Your servant? As my partner. He turned to face her. Equal share of the work, equal share of whatever this land gives us. Nellen studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face for deception, for hidden motives, for the catch that always came with offers from white men. She did not find any. And if trouble comes again, then we face it. Josiah extended his hand. Together. She looked at his hand, looked at the crosses on the hill, looked at the horizon where the sun was disappearing. Then she took his hand and shook it once. Together. The Arizona sun climbed over the mountains, melting the last of winter's grip. The land stretched out in every direction, harsh and beautiful and utterly indifferent to the people who tried to claim it. Josiah Ward had lost everything once, his brothers in arms at Chickamauga, his wife and daughter to the fever, his faith in a world that made any kind of sense. He was not planning to lose anything again. And if trouble came riding over that horizon, if more men with guns and greed in their hearts decided to test his resolve, they would find 2 guns waiting instead of 1. 2 people who had faced death and chosen life. 2 survivors standing together on land that did not care about their pasts or their futures, only about their willingness to endure. The end, for now. But peace in the territory was always borrowed, never owned. And somewhere south of the border, a group of Comancheros was already hearing stories about a rancher with water, land, and an Apache woman who could track like a ghost.